The Cleveland Browns didn't have to say a word. They just hit play. In a quiet but brutal move, the team released behind-the-scenes footage showing Shedeur Sanders sitting in the front row at meetings, deep in discussion with coaches, and studying tape alongside NFL veterans. It wasn't just a look into team dynamics, it was a takedown of a lie. Specifically, the one Rex Ryan told. Just days earlier, Rex Ryan had gone on national television and called Sanders lazy. Said he lacked work ethic. Called him, without hesitation, an embarrassment.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
He said it with the kind of conviction that makes people believe him. That's what made it so dangerous. Because people did believe him, until the Browns dropped the receipts. And those receipts? They didn't just clear Shedeur's name. They exposed a much bigger issue. How quickly the NFL media machine will weaponize opinion against players who don't play the game their way. Sanders didn't just get called out for a bad throw or a missed read. He was painted as entitled, arrogant, unwilling to work. And none of it was true. To make it worse, it's not like Rex Ryan is just some random internet troll. This is a guy with decades in the league, a last name that still carries weight, and a microphone big enough to ruin someone's career before it even starts. Which is why what he did wasn't just reckless. It was a reminder of how easily false narratives can spread when a player doesn't fit the mold. And Shedeur Sanders absolutely does not fit the mold. He's polished, confident, and self-branded to the teeth. He posts, he talks, he flexes. And he works. But to the old-school NFL crowd, guys like Ryan, it feels like disrespect. Like he hasn't earned the right to be seen. It's the classic gatekeeping tactic. If you don't act humble enough, you must not be grinding hard enough. But the footage didn't lie. The real Sanders? He's attentive, strategic, and focused. He's not coasting on his dad's name. He's building his own. And that might be the real issue here. The NFL loves a rags-to-riches story, but it doesn't always know what to do with a player who walks rich in confidence and unbothered by expectations. Now, with the footage public and the truth out, the league reportedly isn't happy with Rex Ryan. The NFL loves drama, sure, but not when it turns into a PR firestorm built on lies. Not when one of its most marketable future stars is getting trashed for no reason other than daring to be visible. Rex tried to rewrite the narrative. The Browns rewound the tape. And Shedeur? He didn't have to say a word. His work said it for him. It's one thing to be wrong. It's another to be loud and wrong, especially on a national stage with a name like Shedeur Sanders in your mouth. That's exactly what Rex Ryan did. Took a reckless swing at a rising player's character with zero evidence and every ounce of old-school arrogance. He accused Shedeur of being lazy, said he lacked effort, and even went as far as to call him an embarrassment. Not because of anything he'd seen, but because of a narrative, a vibe, a projection, one that got shattered almost instantly. The footage came out. Not speculation, not PR spin, just raw, behind-the-scenes clips of Shedeur locked in, sitting front row in team meetings, game planning with coaches, surrounded by veterans. No distractions, no entitlement, just work. Every frame of that video contradicted Rex's rant. Every second exposed the truth. Shedeur wasn't just doing the job. He was leading by example. The exact opposite of lazy. The opposite of what Rex accused him of. And that's when the tone changed. Because what started as just another old-school analyst unloading on a confident young quarterback became a league-level embarrassment. The NFL was reportedly not happy. Not because they suddenly developed a protective streak for players, let's not pretend, but because lies like this come with consequences. When you let former insiders fabricate damaging narratives about visible, marketable young talent, you don't just risk a PR hit. You risk losing the very players the league profits from. Shedeur isn't just any player. He's a new kind of quarterback. One who shows up ready to lead and ready for the spotlight. He has the poise of someone who grew up around greatness. And he has the cameras, the brand presence, and the cultural fluency to match. That's exactly what the NFL wants, until someone like Rex Ryan decides it's too much. That's where the deeper issue lies. Because this wasn't about performance. Rex didn't critique Shedeur's reads, footwork, or mechanics. He went for character. The laziest and most dangerous kind of criticism. The kind that sticks even when it's false. And it stuck just long enough to spread across shows, tweets, and sports radio segments before the truth slapped back harder than expected. And now we're here. The NFL reportedly stepping in behind the scenes, giving Rex Ryan the equivalent of a warning shot. A quiet, you need to back off moment. Not because Rex had an opinion, but because that opinion was baseless, and because the fallout risked something bigger than ratings. It risked exposing the rot in how the league lets its mouthpieces operate. Because the issue here isn't just one bad take. It's the system that gave it oxygen. There's a long-standing pattern in the NFL. Players are told to be themselves, but only within certain limits. Confidence? Sure, but not too early. Personality? Fine, but only when it's palatable. And most of all, don't outshine the hierarchy. Stay humble. Stay quiet. Wait your turn. Shedeur didn't wait. He came in with confidence, poise, and a social media presence stronger than some vets. He knew who he was before the NFL got the chance to brand him. And for some people, especially those who've spent their careers inside the traditional system, that's threatening. It's not about football. It's about control. The NFL has always had an uneasy relationship with outspoken players. They want stars, but they want to manufacture them. They want charisma, but they want to edit it. They love Deion Sanders now, but let's not forget how much backlash he got when he played. He was called loud, selfish, a distraction. And, yet, he backed it up with generational talent. Now his son walks into the league with the same confidence, the same media instincts, the same swagger. And it's the same reaction all over again. Only now there's no excuse. Because we have the footage, the data, the receipts. Shedeur's work ethic is not a question. He's in the meetings. He's in the film room. He's sitting with coaches, absorbing game plans, learning like someone who wants to master the game, not coast on his name. That kind of preparation isn't performative. It's not for likes or clips. It's the kind of work that often doesn't get seen unless someone lies about you and the tape has to do the talking. Which, unfortunately, it did. This whole mess also put a spotlight on the league's double standards. When a player like Shedeur is confident and media savvy, he's cocky. When a less visible player does the same thing later in his career, it's veteran leadership. When Shedeur promotes himself online, he's distracted. When the league packages his highlights into an ad campaign, suddenly it's genius marketing. That contradiction is baked into the culture. Be marketable, but not too marketable. Be confident, but not too confident. Be authentic, but only in ways the system can monetize. The moment a player steps outside those lanes, the backlash is swift, and often dressed up as concern for the team or questions about maturity. But there's nothing immature about Shedeur's approach. In fact, it's one of the most calculated moves a young athlete can make. He's building a brand while building a career, not relying on either one to carry the other. That's not arrogance, that's awareness. And it's working. So when someone like Rex Ryan tries to tear that down with a lie, what does that really say? It says the old guard is losing grip. The players no longer need to be molded. They're walking into the league already formed, already branded, already equipped to handle the spotlight without begging for it. And that disrupts the hierarchy. That's why the league reportedly stepped in. Because they know the stakes. They know this isn't just about one player or one analyst. It's about culture, about power, about who gets to control the story. And Shedeur? He's taking control of his story. Not through rebuttals or interviews, but through presence, through tape, through consistency. He didn't shout back at the critics. He didn't defend himself online. He didn't have to. Because when you're sitting front row, doing the work, putting in the hours, and the cameras are rolling, you don't need to clap back. The truth speaks louder than any soundbite. And now, the burden shifts back to the system, to the NFL, to the media, to the analysts who want to comment without context, spin stories without evidence, and assign character flaws like they're just part of the job. The players aren't playing that game anymore. They're done asking for permission to be confident. They're done shrinking their presence to fit someone else's comfort zone. They're done watching narratives get spun by people who haven't seen a minute of the work. And if the NFL wants to thrive in this new era, it has to choose: evolve with the players or keep watching these public embarrassments unfold when the receipts don't match the rhetoric. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't get humbled. He got vindicated. And the next young star watching this unfold, they just learned that truth doesn't need a press tour. It just needs a camera and the courage to stay consistent. If you're here for the real stories behind the headlines, without the spin, without the fluff, and definitely without the double standards, drop a comment below. Should the league finally confront the way its media machine targets outspoken players? Or will it take more lies getting exposed on camera to force change? Subscribe for more breakdowns, real talk, and unfiltered coverage of sports culture's biggest shakeups. Because this era, it belongs to the players who bring both the work and the receipts. And the system better catch up. It's wild how fast the narrative flipped. 1 minute, Shedeur Sanders is being dragged across media platforms by Rex Ryan, accused of laziness, of not putting in the work, of being, get this, an embarrassment. The next, the entire script collapses under the weight of evidence. No speculation, no hearsay, just clear as day footage. Shedeur sitting front row in team meetings, locked in, learning, leading, doing exactly what every team wants from a franchise quarterback. And that's when the NFL realized it had a real problem. Not a Shedeur Sanders problem. A Rex Ryan problem. A credibility problem. A culture problem. Because the second that footage dropped, Rex Ryan's claims weren't just inaccurate. They were exposed for what they truly were. Lazy, baseless, and rooted in something much deeper than a football critique. His words were less about what Shedeur had done and more about what he represented. Confidence. Independence. Self-branding. All things that make the traditional football establishment deeply uncomfortable. Let's break that down. The NFL has always been about control. On the field, off the field, in the media, everywhere. For decades, it operated on a very clear hierarchy. Players were expected to speak when spoken to, earn their stripes quietly, and always project humility. Especially if you were young. Especially if you were a quarterback. Especially if you were black. Shedeur didn't just ignore that rule book. He walked in like he never even picked it up. And that's exactly what made him a target. Because Shedeur isn't just playing football. He's building a brand, curating an image, controlling his own narrative. He's confident on camera, sharp online, and completely unbothered by what people expect him to be. And that kind of self-assurance, especially coming from someone who hasn't taken an NFL snap yet, it drives the old guard insane. So Rex Ryan did what so many talking heads have done before. He tried to humble a player in public. He didn't critique Shedeur's tape. He didn't question his mechanics. He went straight for his character. Called him lazy. Said he lacked the drive. Claimed he wasn't serious. And then the receipts hit. Footage from practice. Footage from meetings. Shedeur was right there, sitting with coaches and veterans, absorbing knowledge, taking notes, staying focused. Doing the exact opposite of what Rex said. It wasn't just a wrong take, it was a straight-up fabrication. And the league knew it. That's why the reported warning came down. Quietly, behind the scenes. The NFL doesn't like getting embarrassed. They don't like having their platform used to spread lies about a player they could one day market as the face of the league. And they definitely don't like when the truth makes their insiders look like they're stuck in the past. Because let's be clear, Rex Ryan isn't just some random commentator. He's a former head coach, a longtime media figure, and a loud voice in the NFL's echo chamber. When he speaks, people listen. So when he used that platform to smear Shedeur without a shred of evidence, it wasn't just a mistake, it was malpractice. And the NFL saw the fallout coming. Because Shedeur isn't just another player. He's a symbol of what the league is becoming, whether they like it or not. The modern NFL star isn't just strong, fast, and smart. He's visible. He's strategic. He knows the business and the game. And he's not going to dim his light just to make someone like Rex Ryan feel comfortable. That's the real threat here. Because Shedeur's whole approach is a challenge to everything the old system was built on. The league used to decide when a player got to be a star. Now, players are creating their own stardom before they even hit the field. They're leveraging social media, building fan bases, and monetizing their image on their terms. And Shedeur? He's doing it better than most veterans. He's got the last name, sure, but he's not coasting on it. He's putting in the hours. He's studying film. He's taking meetings seriously. And he's doing it all while remaining visible, confident, and vocal about who he is and what he stands for. And yet, one false comment from Rex Ryan could have undermined all of it. That's why this controversy matters. Because it's not just about Shedeur. It's about every player who's ever had their work ethic questioned because they didn't perform humility the right way. It's about every black quarterback who's been called arrogant for being confident. It's about every outspoken player who's been told to know their place. This was a line in the sand, a moment where the narrative got flipped before it could spiral out of control. And that's why Rex's silence afterward was so loud. There was no apology, no correction, no on-air clarification, just quiet backpedaling. Because once the footage came out, there was no defense. And if the NFL hadn't stepped in, if they hadn't issued that reported warning, the damage could have been lasting, not just for Shedeur, but for the league's already fragile relationship with its next generation talent. Because here's the reality. Today's players aren't waiting to be validated. They're stepping into the league with their own teams, their own brands, their own platforms. And the NFL can either embrace that or get left behind. Shedeur Sanders is the model for what's next. He's not toning it down. He's not apologizing for his confidence. And he's definitely not letting someone like Rex Ryan define who he is. His work speaks for itself. His footage speaks for itself. His presence speaks for itself. And that's what makes him so dangerous to the establishment. Because he didn't just prove Rex wrong. He exposed the entire system that allows these narratives to flourish unchecked. A system where image often outweighs evidence. Where confidence gets mislabeled as arrogance. Where outspoken players get punished until their silence becomes profitable. But this time, the player didn't stay silent. He didn't have to say a word. The truth did all the talking. So now the question isn't should Shedeur tone it down. It's how many more players have been misrepresented like this, and how many didn't have the platform to fight back. Because the only difference between this moment and the ones we don't hear about is visibility. And that's why the NFL can't afford to ignore this anymore. It's time to rethink who gets to speak, who gets to lead, who gets to define what work ethic and leadership actually look like in the modern league. Because it's not about being quiet and compliant anymore. It's about showing up with intention, doing the work, and owning your image before someone else decides what it should be. Shedeur Sanders has already mastered that. And the only embarrassment here was the one broadcast across national media by a man too stuck in the past to check the facts before firing off. Let this be a turning point. Not just for Shedeur, not just for Rex, but for every future player who dares to walk into the league already knowing who they are. Because confidence isn't the problem. Lying about someone's character to preserve an outdated status quo? That's the real issue. And if this moment showed anything, it's that the new generation is ready to call it out. With evidence. With presence. With poise. No shouting. No drama. Just facts. The real twist in all of this? Rex Ryan thought he could shape the narrative with one take. One swing at Shedeur Sanders' reputation. One moment of public humiliation disguised as analysis. And for a second, it worked. People ran with it. Headlines popped up. Pundits weighed in. The character of a young quarterback was being questioned. Again. Not because of performance, not because of attitude, but because he dared to look confident before someone in a blazer gave him permission. But then the footage hit. The real footage. The kind of evidence that doesn't need a spin. Shedeur, right there, front row in team meetings, locked in next to coaches and veterans, dialed into game plans, studying, learning, showing respect to the process. All the things that Rex claimed he wasn't doing were not only being done, but documented. There was no wiggle room, no misinterpretation, just a clean contradiction to everything Rex had said. And suddenly, the lie wasn't just exposed, it was embarrassing. This wasn't a debate about how good Shedeur might become. This wasn't even about talent. This was about truth versus narrative. And in that battle, the narrative lost. That's the part Rex didn't see coming. He thought he was just taking a safe shot. A young, confident player with a big personality? Easy target. Say he's lazy, say he's not serious, say he's a distraction. And watch the internet agree. It's an old play from a tired playbook. But what Rex didn't count on was how much the game has changed. This isn't the early 2000s. Players aren't just players anymore. They're brands. They're content creators. They're documented. Every meeting, every moment, every piece of behind-the-scenes work, it's all potentially online. There's no mystery anymore. If you're doing the work, chances are it's already on tape. And if you're lying about someone who is doing the work, you're not just wrong. You're irrelevant. The NFL knows that. That's why the reported warning to Rex Ryan was so significant. Because it wasn't just about Shedeur. It was about protecting the credibility of the league itself. If someone with a national platform can make up a narrative like that and not face consequences, what does that say to every other player grinding in silence? What does that say to the rookies watching, thinking their work will speak for them, only to find out a hot take can rewrite their story? The league may not always get it right, but they saw this one clearly. They saw how fast the lie got exposed. They saw the backlash. And they knew that if they didn't step in, even subtly, they'd be signaling to every young player that truth doesn't matter as much as personality politics. And let's be honest, the message that Rex tried to send wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. Because when you accuse a young black quarterback of laziness, it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It pulls from decades of stereotypes. It plays into every unfair assumption that's been used to discredit talent that looks, speaks, or carries itself differently from the NFL's traditional mold. It wasn't just a bad opinion. It was part of a much bigger, much uglier pattern. That's why this moment hit harder than just another media misfire. Because Shedeur Sanders didn't respond with outrage. He didn't engage in the mud. He didn't stoop to that level. He let the truth roll out in silence. He let the video tell the real story. And in doing so, he proved a larger point, that the power to define your image no longer belongs to the media alone. It belongs to the players who show up, do the work, and don't flinch when the system tries to tear them down. This is the future of the NFL. Players who are both performers and public figures. Athletes who aren't afraid to lead from day one, not just on the field, but in front of the camera. And the league can either learn to celebrate that, or it can keep getting called out when its representatives try to tear it down. Shedeur didn't have to defend his character. His character defended itself. And that's the biggest shift of all. Because the more players like Shedeur refuse to play the game by the old rules, the harder it becomes for voices like Rex Ryan's to carry weight. The authority they used to have is crumbling, because the truth is streaming, trending, and circulating faster than a false narrative can take root. So next time someone wants to label a player before watching the tape, they might want to think twice. Because the cameras are always rolling. And this new generation, they come receipt ready. If you're done with the tired tropes, if you want a league that actually respects authenticity, drop your thoughts in the comments. Should the NFL finally shut down false media narratives? Or is this just the start of a bigger shift in how players take control of their story? Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Stay tuned. Because the old rules, they're not just bending anymore. They're breaking.